On July 3, 2026, the Philadelphia Flyers dropped a $90 million bomb on the entire NHL. Born from a bitter trade demand and a lingering grudge, it was a contract intentionally designed to corner an opposing franchise. And in the process, they broke the league's financial structure forever. This is the story of the ultimate poison pill, the Leo Carlsson offer sheet. Drafted second overall by the Anaheim Ducks in the 2023 NHL Draft, Leo Carlsson immediately became the bedrock of Anaheim's rebuild. At 6'3", he possessed the incredibly rare combination of towering size, elite two-way hockey IQ, and the playmaking ability of a true number one center. The Ducks knew they had something special, and they began building their entire long-term plan around him. By his third season in 2025-26, he emerged as an elite top-line center, recording 29 goals and 38 assists for 67 points in just 70 games, all while playing through an injury that sidelined him for weeks. The numbers were impressive, but the pace of his production was making franchise history. Carlsson became the youngest player in Ducks franchise history to score 50 career goals and the youngest to reach 100 career points. Across the entire league, he cemented himself as the youngest Swedish-born NHL player to ever hit the 100-point mark. Internationally, he represented Sweden at the 2025 NHL Four Nations Face-Off and earned a spot on their roster for the 2026 Winter Olympic Games, though the injury ultimately kept him out of the tournament. In the NHL, true top-line centers are almost impossible to acquire. Teams rely heavily on the draft to find them, making their long-term retention the top priority for any front office. Carlsson was a franchise cornerstone, and that made him the ultimate target. But why did the Flyers specifically target him? The answer lies in the 2022 NHL entry draft, a day that planted the seeds for this entire saga. The Flyers used the 5th overall pick to select a highly touted forward named Cutter Gauthier. A standout power forward with a lethal shot, Gauthier initially seemed ecstatic to join the organization, even stating publicly that he was, quote, built to be a Flyer. But by May of 2023, the relationship completely unraveled. For reasons that Gauthier has never explained to the public, he told the team that he no longer wanted to play for the organization and requested a trade. For months, Gauthier and his camp completely ghosted the franchise. They ignored phone calls from management and skipped the team's summer development camp entirely. It got to the point where Flyers general manager Daniel Briere flew to Sweden during the World Junior Championship just to secure a face-to-face meeting. Gauthier flat out refused to see him. Briere held out hope, but eventually his hands were tied. On January 8th, 2024, he was forced to pull the trigger on a shocking midseason trade, shipping Gauthier to the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for young defenseman Jamie Drysdale and a 2025 second-round draft pick. The Flyers managed to salvage what they could from an impossible situation, being publicly backed into a corner by a teenager. Watching a premier asset walk left a permanent mark on Briere's front office. Anaheim walked away with a franchise piece, completely unaware that they had just painted a target on their own backs. Fast forward to the summer of 2025. Leo Carlsson was entering the final stretch of his entry-level deal. Anaheim had a clear window to lock up their superstar before becoming vulnerable to outside offers. Reports indicated that Carlsson was willing to sign an 8-year extension at a reasonable $9.5 million per year. But in a move that remains baffling, Anaheim waited. In September 2025, Ducks general manager Pat Verbeek finally sat down with Carlsson's agents, Matt and Ryan Keeter. He presented an official offer, 8 years at $10.5 million per year. Verbeek viewed it as fair market value, but the window of opportunity had already closed. With the salary cap rising and Carlsson's value climbing, the Keeters quickly rejected the deal, opting to gauge where the market was heading. Anaheim quickly realized they had misplayed their hand. Throughout late October and early November, the Ducks aggressively tried to restart talks, but Carlsson's camp officially tabled all negotiations, stating they wanted Carlsson to solely focus on the season without the distraction of an ongoing contract dispute. By early June 2026, Carlsson, his family, and his agents held a strategic meeting to map out their future. They adopted a clear and calculated plan. They were going to wait for Chicago Blackhawks phenom Connor Bedard, who was also a pending restricted free agent, to sign his deal, effectively setting the market. Once Bedard's numbers were public, they were aiming to finalize a deal with Anaheim by September to ensure Carlsson didn't miss training camp. In mid-June, they formally notified the Ducks of their plan. By playing the waiting game a year earlier, Anaheim had completely lost control of the situation. They had handed all the leverage to the agents, and in doing so, they had opened a glaring window of vulnerability that other teams immediately noticed. On June 30th, 2026, the NHL officially permitted teams to contact pending restricted free agents. The floodgates opened instantly. Carlsson's agents were inundated with calls from 7 or 8 different teams, with 4 ready to extend offers right on the spot. Stunned by the unprecedented level of interest and the sheer size of the numbers being thrown around, the Keters warned Anaheim that an offer sheet was imminent. The very next day, on July 1st, Daniel Briere exploited that exact vulnerability. The Philadelphia Flyers extended a historic 5-year, $90 million offer sheet to Leo Carlsson at a staggering $18 million per year, built almost entirely out of front-loaded signing bonuses. Carlsson was left completely speechless by the numbers. But the brilliance of this contract wasn't just in the total dollar amount, it was in the structure. This was a textbook poison pill. The deal was heavily front-loaded and built almost entirely out of signing bonuses. In the NHL, these bonuses must be paid in massive lump sums on July 1st, making the contract virtually buyout-proof and forcing ownership to cut a massive check regardless of lockouts or injuries. Briere had brilliantly forced Anaheim into a corner. Letting Carlsson walk meant handing Philadelphia a foundational cornerstone, but matching the offer meant absorbing an $18 million cap hit that would financially cripple the Ducks through the end of the decade. Then there was the Cutter Gauthier factor. The player who had forced his way out of Philadelphia was now due for his own extension in Anaheim. By forcing the Ducks to eat an $18 million cap hit for Carlsson, Briere was directly sabotaging Anaheim's ability to afford a new contract for the very player they took from him 2 years prior. On July 3rd, Leo Carlsson signed the $90 million offer sheet, officially putting Anaheim on the clock. The clock started immediately. Anaheim had 7 days to either match the $18 million a year deal or take 4 first-round draft picks as compensation from Philadelphia. On paper, 4 first-round draft picks sounds like a decent haul, but because the Flyers were a competitive playoff team, those picks were heavily projected to land late in the first round. Surrendering a proven top-line center for 4 late draft picks is a massive roll of the dice, one incredibly unlikely to ever produce a player of Carlsson's caliber. Interestingly, on July 2nd, insider Elliot Friedman reported that Pat Verbeek had stated that he would match any offer sheet for Carlsson. What was meant as a deterrent became a direct invitation, and Briere called his bluff immediately. True to his word, on July 9th, 2026, the Anaheim Ducks officially announced they were matching the offer.
We expect the offer sheet to be this high? Nope. No, we did not see that one coming. But
Carlsson was now locked in through the 2030-31 season, instantly becoming the highest paid player in NHL history at the time. Anaheim had saved their superstar, but the fine print of the match deal handed all leverage directly to Carlsson. The 5-year term intentionally walks Carlsson to unrestricted free agency at 26. Worse, the final year carries a full no-movement clause, meaning Anaheim wouldn't just risk losing him for nothing, they'd be legally stripped of the power to trade him before he walks.
We feel confident that this contract will be a good one in the end.
A few days later, on July 14th, Carlsson's agents appeared on Elliot Friedman's 32 Thoughts podcast to discuss the offer sheet. They exonerated the Ducks front office, insisting the delay was purely a byproduct of their strategy to wait for Bedard to set the market, not a deliberate attempt to hardball their franchise center. Regardless of the intent, the financial landscape of the NHL was permanently changed for good. The $18 million a year deal completely reset the market for elite young talent. Every rising star now had a new, undisputed baseline to point to in negotiations. The impact was felt immediately. On July 29th, the San Jose Sharks signed Macklin Celebrini to a 5-year, $18.8 million contract, surpassing Carlsson as the league's highest paid player. As for the Ducks, they kept their franchise center, but the financial wreckage remains. Cutter Gauthier is now due for an extension projected at $15 million annually, leaving Anaheim's front office to navigate the long-term fallout of Daniel Briere's revenge. It's a fascinating look at what happens when ego, leverage, and business strategy collide. One delayed contract negotiation and one unresolved trade demand completely rewrote the market for every elite prospect in the game. It goes to show that patience doesn't always pay off. Sometimes it just costs you an extra $8 million a year. So, was this a masterclass in petty revenge, or did the Philadelphia Flyers go a step too far? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments.